Hey, what's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Legacy Wave 2 Core Class Shockwave. Here he is. Before we take a look, let's take a look at the packaging. So the packaging here, of course, we have a nice shot of Shockwave in his really cool ship mode with his giant satellite dish, which looks pretty cool. We have the Legacy logo, we have Transformers, of course, the window is displaying the figure when it's inside the box. A nice artwork of Shockwave there looking very menacing and cool with that illuminating yellow eye. On the back, of course, he transforms into 11 steps. There is a shot of his ship mode and robot mode, and of course on the final side of the box we have the Decepticon Legacy artwork. We have Decepticon Megatron, Dragstrip, Iguanus, Skywarp, and Cakeback, and that is pretty much it for the packaging, so let's now get into this review. So here we have Legacy Core Class Shockwave in his robot mode. Let's take a look at the details, starting at the very top with the head sculpt. Some nice yellow for the eye, which looks very cool and menacing. Of course, some nice silver for the ears or horns, and some purple for the main head section, which looks very well sculpted and detailed. For this arm here, a nice Decepticon symbol at the shoulder with lots of purple, overall sculpted very well, and looks pretty cool. Of course, the other arm is slightly modified for the gun look, which looks pretty cool as well. Same Decepticon symbol at the shoulder. I do really like how they kept this kind of oval shape for the chest with some silver and purple all around it. Also, the stomach region does look very good. There's lots of paneling kind of going down towards the crotch section. That actually looks very cool with all those layers. Getting to the legs, some silver and purple for the front of the legs with some silver at the feet and the insides of the legs and the outside of the legs as well. Overall, very well detailed at the front, at the back. These are actually the wings for the spaceship mode, which I actually think they're stored pretty well in my opinion. Yeah, you can see a little bit of the tips of the blasters, but I actually think it looks very, very cool. If you wanted to, you could actually unfold them and give him sort of a jetpack look if you wanted to, but this is typically how he will be positioned for the robot mode. So detail-wise, looks very nice, very classic to the G1 Shockwave we know and love. That's pretty much it for details. Let's now get into articulation. So for the head, you can rotate all the way around. For the arm, there is a hinge right here. There is a ball joint, so you can rotate all the way around. Out, in, there is a ball joint at the elbow as well. Same for the other arm. Now, for the legs, there is no waist rotation. It can do the splits. There is a way past 90 knee bend. It can kick that far forward, that far back. And of course, there is a swivel at the knee because it's on a ball joint as well. And of course, no ankle pivot, which is not that surprising because typically core class figures do not have it. It's kind of a rare occurrence. But honestly, with core class figures, since they're like $10, I'm typically not that picky where articulation and things like that come. I just really like the small little figures, and they're kind of fun to mess with whenever you don't want to transform something super complex like Blitzwing or something like that. But overall, really cool looking robot mode. Let's now get into his one accessory, which is kind of where this figure kind of goes down in my opinion. I don't really understand what this accessory is really for. Yes, it's a satellite dish, but it doesn't really seem like something Shockwave would have. I kind of wish he came with like some invention he made from the G1 show or some other weapon it seems like he would have, but this just seems kind of weird and misplaced to me. Of course, it is sculpted very well. There's some nice red and silver and purple for this main section here, and if you want to, you can just plug this right into his hands. What is he going to do with this satellite dish? I have no idea. But it does look cool. It's excellently well sculpted and made, but I really don't understand the purpose of it. But overall, that's pretty much it for the robot mode. Let's now get into some comparisons. So now for our first comparison, here we have Legacy Shockwave with Siege Leader Class Shockwave. As you can see, I think they did a really good job with recreating all the classic characteristics of this big Shockwave into a smaller form. That being said, I think they had a few missed opportunities, like the big wire hose for his blaster. I think that should have been included with this. Maybe just like a small little rubber wire piece that could be removed. I really would have liked that. Also, as you can see, for the gun arm and the hand, they're actually different coats of purple from the rest of the body. I think they could have done that for this because it would break up all the same purple all over the body. And speaking of the purple, I really do like how they use the exact same coat of purple for both figures. It's pretty much exactly the same shade of purple, which is pretty nice. Overall, two pretty cool Shockwaves. I think they could have done better with the accessory, and I think they could have maybe broken up the purple a little bit more. Also, another thing to point out is, as you can see for the main oval section, you can see as the chest, it is silver here, but on the bigger one, it's kind of a transparent plastic there to reveal some more details. So there's a few things they have changed and modified. Also, of course, for the backpack, it is quite a bit different for the bigger version, and these are, of course, the wings for the spaceship mode. So there is some pretty big changes in design But overall, of course, the classic characteristics of the one eye and the blaster arm have definitely stayed, and I think it really works in this small form. I'd also really like if they made some more classic G1 Decepticons and Autobots, like they can make a Blitzwing or an Astrotrain or an Ironhide. That'd be pretty cool if they got to make those. But that's pretty much it for this comparison. Let's now move on to some core class comparisons. Now for some core class comparisons, here is every single Legacy core class figure so far that has been made. So we have Hot Rod, Shockwave, G2, Megatron, we have Skywarp, and of course Iguanus, which is definitely my favorite core class figure that has been made so far. Of these big bunch, of course, besides Iguanus, I have to say Shockwave is definitely my second favorite. Unfortunately, we've had two repaints, two core class repaints in this line so far, Megatron and Skywarp, and definitely a lot of people have been complaining about Skywarp with the lack of null rays. I actually do quite like this G2 Megatron. I do like the camo colors to it, and I will be reviewing that figure over on the channel very, very soon. So pretty cool Legacy lineup so far. I'd hope in the Wave 3 we don't get another repaint, because we've had two so far in 1 and 2, so I'd like two brand new molds like Blitzwing or Astrotrain, maybe even Ironhide. That'd be really, really cool to see. Let's now move on to some more core class comparisons. Now for the last set of comparisons, here we have pretty much every classic Decepticon they have done in the core class size. We have Soundwave, Megatron, Shockwave, Skywarp, and Starscream. So I think these all look very cool next to each other, and I think they did a pretty good job on all of them. I think the Starscream mold has pretty good. Honestly, I'd say the weakest one has to be Megatron, because unfortunately there is a big backpack to him, but overall I think they've been pretty good figures that are definitely worth picking up. I'd really love to see maybe a core class Galvatron. That'd be super, super cool, because they pretty much recreated every figure that was in a larger scale size, like Earthrise Starscream, and downsized it. So all they really need to do now out of the classic Decepticons is really Galvatron and maybe an Astrotrain and a Blitzwing. That'd be really, really cool to see to complete the big bunch. And of course, we still do have a Thundercracker that needs to be made, and I think that probably will happen, and of course it will just be a direct repaint of these two figures. Or of course it could have a brand new head sculpt, like a Screaming Fist or something like that. That'd be pretty cool to see. Let's now move on to the transformation of core class Shockwave. So now for transformation, what you're going to want to do is go to the legs. There's this whole hinge section here that you're going to just move down like that. As you can see, this whole piece is really just collapsed. I do wish this connection was a little bit more secure, because it really just kind of flaps whenever you move the figure, so that's kind of unfortunate. Now you're just going to move in the legs like this, so the knees are pretty much facing each other. Now what you're going to want to do is move the arms up, rotate them around by that shoulder joint, and you want to have it exactly like that, which this transformation actually has a lot of similarities to the Siege one, which is pretty cool. Rotate, move that up, just like that, and there we go. We can then move back here, flip out the wings, which these are just tabbed in. Of course, there is a tab and there is a slot right there. And then you're just going to move this whole section up while actually collapsing the head in, just like this. And when you do that, this whole section will pop out like that, which is a pretty cool little feature there. And then as you can see, there is tabs here and here and here, and there is slots there. Unfortunately, this could just be my copy. They don't tend to actually stay tabbed in, which is kind of unfortunate. I'm wondering if maybe the tabs were too small or too big. I'm not really sure. They sometimes get aligned in, but I typically do not get all four in place. But there is pretty much the entire back half ready. Now what you're going to want to do is just fold in this section. As you can see, this will just slide in there just like that. Do the same thing on the other side. Fold it in, tap everything into place, and there we have a Shockwave in his ship mode. Of course, there is one last step to do. You can then get the satellite. There is a port right there, and there is a peg right here. Typically, I do not store the satellite dish on top because I think it looks a little bit oversized and silly, but this is the complete ship mode, which looks pretty cool. Let's take a look at the details. Here we have Shockwave in his really cool looking spaceship mode. I think they did a pretty good job recreating the Siege ship mode and putting it into a smaller size. So detail wise, of course, there's some nice purple up here, some more silver on the outsides. I do like these big prong sections there. Of course, we have the big satellite dish with some nice silver and red, of course, really well sculpted. We have this really big communications tower, which is pretty cool. That's a similar characteristic to the bigger version, as well as these big wing pieces. These are actually accessories for the larger Siege version. It came with a whole little glider kit, which you could add all the accessories onto the ship mode to make it bigger. And I will make sure to bring out the Siege Shockwave in his spaceship mode for comparison in just a little bit. We have lots of really nice little towers and lots of nice sculpting and detailing panels. Looks very good. I think they did a pretty good job with the details, considering it's pretty much all purple. I think they really focused on putting as much little details in Easter eggs as possible. Of course, we do have the arms kind of just sticking out here, which is kind of unfortunate. In the Siege version, it was completely covered up, so unfortunately there really isn't an area to cover that at all. But overall, the ship mode looks very cool on the bottom. Pretty clean. Of course, this is the chest and these are the arms, so not a lot going on the bottom, and that's pretty much it for details. So there is actually kind of a pretty cool feature you can do for the ship mode. You can actually get this peg and you can hinge this down like this, and you can have a figure hold it, which is what I'm going to do right now. So I'm just going to zoom out the camera a little bit, and I'm going to bring out the Siege Shockwave, and you can have him hold it. You can just plug this right into place just like that, and there we have Shockwave wielding Shockwave, which I think looks pretty cool. I'm actually really glad they put in this feature because, of course, the original Shockwave in the show transformed to a gun, and unfortunately this Siege version didn't really have that capability of doing that, so they really just put that feature in this. I think it works pretty well. I typically do take the satellite dish off of it in the gun mode because it looks kind of silly, but overall I think it's a pretty cool playable feature in my opinion. But very, very nice. So let's now get into some comparisons for the Shockwave ship. And now for a few quick comparisons. Here we have the Siege Shockwave and the Legacy Shockwave. As you can see, they do have heavy inspiration and design from each other. As you can see, they really recreated these big blasters here with the wings, which is actually pretty cool. Also, there's the big command tower there, which is this little small area right there. As you can see, the front is also very similar in design, which is pretty cool how they recreate it. One interesting little detail is the chest piece for the Siege one is actually on top of, for the Legacy one, it is actually still on the bottom. So there's a few things that are different from each other, but really overall it is just a downsized version of this one, and I'm actually okay with it because it's a pretty good figure. So two pretty cool looking Shockwaves. And now for one more quick comparison, here he is with his Wavemate G2 Legacy Core Class Megatron. Size-wise, of course, this one's a little bit more compact, this one's a little bit longer, but two pretty cool-looking Core Class figures, and of course, a really cool-looking Leader Class Shockwave. So that's pretty much it for the comparisons and the ship mode. Let's now move into the final thoughts. Now for the final thoughts for the Transformers Legacy Core Class Shockwave. Starting in the ship mode, I think it really works. I really do like how they pretty much recreated the entire Siege Shockwave ship and just pretty much downsized it and put it into this version. Of course, there is a few changes, like how the chest is placed on the larger version. It's actually on top. With this one, it is on the bottom. And of course, there is a new edition of the satellite dish, which really I don't think it works for this figure at all. So I do kind of wish they had a better accessory or just didn't include one, because honestly, I think it could work without one. Of course, they did recreate the really cool small little command center, and on the bigger one, of course, it is much bigger. Overall, I think it's a pretty cool looking ship mode. Yeah, it is kind of bland in color. I do wish maybe there was a little bit of a breakup in the purple. There is some silver here and there, which does help quite a bit. But if they maybe put in some red or some yellow, like from his eye or something, that'd be pretty nice if they put it like at the front or something. But overall, a pretty cool looking spaceship mode. Getting, of course, into transformations, pretty simple both ways. You'll get it after one time looking at the instructions. It's like 11 steps, very simple, very straightforward. Robot mode I actually quite like, but I do have to have the same problem or con for that mode as well. I do kind of wish there was a bit of a breakup of the purple, because there's only a little bit of silver, and it's really mostly in the at the legs. Really at the top half there is a lot of just purple and a tiny bit of yellow from the eye. So I kind of wish like they took inspiration from the Siege version, where his hands and his gun is a different shade of purple from the rest of his body. So if they had like a lighter coat of purple for his hands and the gun, it would make it a little bit more interesting, and less, of course, just like a big blob of purple. But overall, I think the robot mode is actually very accurate to the G1. Shockwave looks very cool. It looks really good next to Megatron, Starscream, Skywarp, and of course the other core class figures. I think it's a pretty good figure. Another complaint again is, of course, the accessory. It works okay in this mode. I just don't really know what it does. You know, it's a big war spaceship. I really don't know what they would do with the satellites. but it really doesn't work in the robot mode because I don't even know what Shockwave would do with it. He's really a scientist, not really a communications chief like, of course, Soundwave. I think this would have worked pretty good with that figure. I really don't know what they would have included in, if they didn't have the satellite dish. I guess that's probably why they just slapped this together and just said, this is fine, this is good enough. Of course, they could have maybe given him, like, tools or, like, a computer pad because, he is a scientist, an inventor, or, like, an evil lab expert, so they could have done something like that. I don't know. Maybe they could have included another minicon like Rumble or Ravage or something that we haven't gotten already from cassette-wise from Siege. They could have done something like that. But overall, I think it's a pretty good figure. I think it's definitely my second favorite core class figure of the Legacy ones so far. My favorite is definitely Iguanus. 100% get that. It's a pretty good figure, just, the accessory I kind of saw coming wasn't going to be very good. I highly recommend to get this figure. I will be reviewing the G2 Megatron very, very soon, so make sure you stay tuned for that over on the channel. I think that's pretty much it, so I'll see you next.